All right, so let's hop into it. Let's start by kind of catching up on what we did yesterday. So I'm running this on 8081. Right now, this is Barkwire. It has this app component that renders a header and this container inside of it, which has a dogs list component that renders a list of dogs. And if we click on a dog, its votes go up like that. Cool. So let's take a look at how we did that. Starting from the router, I made how's that high component? Get rid of that. So we pulled in a dog's view. Anybody remember the difference between a view and a component is? What's the difference between a view and a component?
Everything should route to a view.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's basically it. That a view is something that you route to. And then as far as like what goes in a view and what goes in a component, everybody remember the distinction there?
You should do state stuff.
Yep, any kind of state stuff. Fetching things, updating things, those calls should all happen from the views. Components go inside of those. We try to keep those as dumb as possible. Cool. So we're saying, all right, this app.view, this always renders. But we have this little hole that gets punched through the template. And whenever we match a path or a name or something like that, this component is going to be what shows in the hole. So if we look at the dogs component, this, we can prove this, is what renders inside of that little main hole. Yep, so over in app, we have main and that router view, and then this is a div with a dogs class. Main div with a dogs class. The whole thing just swaps out. Cool, and then inside this, we pull in a dog list component, and we render it there. This thing takes in a list of dogs. Dogs come in as a prop. We v4 over them. For every dog in dogs, we want to render a dog listing and pass the dog in. And our dog listing takes in the dog and shows some stuff. Back over here, if we click on this component, why do we have to use click native? Do we remember?
Because the event and native gets it from the store.
Good guess.
Use the browser.
Oh.
Yes, because we can make up our own events. And this is how it knows it's not something that we made up. We want the actual browser event click. So we say click native. And so we're listening to that. Anytime that event happens, we call upvote dog and pass in the dog ID. And this emits a custom event, just like we did with the DOM. So we can listen to that event and have this happen in response. And then we dispatch that to the store. Say, hey, do the upvote dog action, and here's the ID that you need. So we hop over to the store. We go to upvote dog. All it does is commit the, starts with an M, commits the We're in the action. This is the upvote dog action.
Oh, mutation.
Yeah, we want to commit the upvote dog mutation, which finds the dog based on the ID and increments its votes. Cool. What questions do you have before we do new stuff?
I can't remember how to launch the server.
Cool. There you go. And when you forget, you can go to the package JSON, and it shows you what commands you can do. Cool. What else? Other questions? All right, so Jeremiah wanted to see that like show page. So to do this show page, I want to make it so that I can click on a dog, and instead of doing this upvoting thing, it like maybe displays that dog right here. So if I go to the dogs view, dog list component. All right, so I probably don't want to actually do this upvote dog thing. So let's get rid of that. I'm going to hang on to that method for a sec. I want to make it so that when I click on a dog listing, I navigate to, I would call it dog view. So I'm going to touch source views dog.view. I'm going to open that component. I'm going to make a template. I'm going to make a script. I'm going to make a style. If I want to use SCSS, how do I do that? Lang. Beautiful. So in here, I'm going to say, we're going to smoke test this. So I'll just say H2 dog. And over in my router, I need to bring that in. It's imported. All right, now we got to figure out how to route this. There's two different ways you can do this, but both of them illustrate a really important point about routing. Your route hierarchy, because you can nest routes inside each other, match how something looks, not its data relationship. We can have the dogs list and any individual dog side by side in the routes, or we can have dog as a child route of dogs. It 100% depends on how it looks. So if we have a list and a detail, actually I would draw that differently. So I have this list here, and then when you click on one, it does that. We say that this is a child route of this route, because you see them both at the same time, and you really see this one inside of this one. If instead we had a list of dogs, and when you click on one, the list of dogs goes away, and you get the individual dog. They're side by side. Both of them completely valid ways to do that, and that's what informs that decision. So we want to do it inside. And so we say, all right, what are the children of this? And I always forget the syntax for this. I know that I want one that's dog and its path is ID and its component is dog. But we also need an index for this, because like if I haven't selected a dog, what do I see? That's the concept of an index, is you haven't chosen anything. So what's the default? I'm gonna take a look at this. Oops, missing a comma. Okay, very nice. And then over in dog listing, let's say I click on their name and I link to that. So I'm going to do a router link to wrap their name. I'm going to send it to I'm going to give it the little object to pass in, and it's going to go to the route named dog, and I need to give it a parameter since I'm saying, all right, it needs the ID of the dog. What you do is params, and that's an object too, and you give that an ID of dog.id. Now, let's make that a little bit more readable. Say that, and that. It's a little bit better. We can also kind of do this more like an object would be. That's a little bit better too. All right, so what I should see now when I go to the site is the dog's name should be a link, and it should go to / whatever their ID is. And sure enough, that says /1, that one says /2, that one says /3. And if I click on one, it updated the URL. I don't see my component though. Interesting. So one of the best tools you can have for debugging Vue stuff is the Vue browser DevTools helper. So this will work on any Vue app, yours or somebody else's. And you can do things like see the route hierarchy, which is kind of dope. These are all the routes that are displaying right now, or all the components. Cool. My dog component is not there. Cool. Maybe this is just ID. Let's see. Oh, I know why. Because that's matching, but I need to punch a hole so I can see this, right? I haven't done that. So I need to go to, I guess, whether I would do it in the dog list component, where would that go? Where do I want to punch the hole? Guesses? Dogs.view. Why?
Because that's the component being rendered by our browse.
Yep, and it's a view.
Or view.
Like, if we're going to create a view hierarchy, we should do it with views, not the regular components. So we'll do router view, and there it is. Cool. So next thing I want to do is I want to make those show up side by side. So all right, I've got that, and I want those to be together. So cheap way to do that is wrap them in a div. We need to figure out why they're together. What is the semantic reason these two things are grouped? So that's probably something like, we can call this a master detail, which I believe is the proper term for that. And then down here, we can say, all right, master detail should be flexed. And it should flow, flex flow, row, no wrap, row wrap. That way, if the UI collapses, they just show on top of each other instead. Oop, I see why. There we go. And I'm going to give this some padding also. Good. And I also want, okay, so this dog detail, maybe make this class of dog. And then over here, I can say, all right, and then the dog inside of that, I want to have some padding also. Yep. Neat. All right, so this will work, but I want to get a particular dog to show up.
So can you just dog this for just a second?
Yeah.
Do you mean dogs.view, the one that we were looking
Sorry, I
at?
meant dogs.
So we wrapped it in a div. We have the list that we had before, and this is the hole that we punched through the view. So any child of that is going to show inside of it. You good, Rob?
Sorry, let me see dog listing or not?
Yeah, no problem. I'll take a look.
Show that area.
Views dog.view. Show me your dog
View.
Yeah, the
Yes. Router link to.
And
Save
in
this.
dog,
Change the image made.
dogs, we call them router view.
That's a Webpack error. So,
Kyle,
yeah.
Mine's just not showing.
All right, that's fine. Okay, did you punch the hole?
That's on GitHub.
Yes. Render.review, and then,
Yeah, go back to where that was. Some dogs. Okay, and then let me see your render. Okay, let me see what happens if you hover over this. One of the links. Yep, hover over the link. There you go.
oh, the
Cool.
link.
Click on it. There you go.
Oh. Didn't realize we had to click it.
Cool. So, onward. Now, I don't want it to say dog. What I want to do is actually get the details for that dog. So this is a view. That means that looking up state, totally legit. So I'm going to do that. Say export default. And whenever this component is mounted, then I want it to this $store dispatch fetch dog, and I need to get the ID. There's a magic variable available in view routes, this $route, and we can get the params, including that ID. It's called ID because we called it ID here. If I called this fart, route params fart. Cool. So I'm saying, hey, anytime you load this up, I want you to try to grab a dog for me. And then I want a computed property called dog that returns this dot store. I think how I want to do this. Do getters dot dog, and then I want to give it this $route params ID. Anytime you do something like this, that's a good hint that like maybe that should be a computed property too. So I'm going to make a dog ID that just aliases that. Returns this .route .params.id, and then these ones can become this .dog ID, like that. Pretty cool.
So you have the computed properties like the formats?
Yep. Cool. So now I need two things. I need an action for fetch dog, and I need a getter for dog. Both those things happen in the store. So for the action, fetch dog, let's destructure and commit, takes an ID, and let's see. At some point, faking out an API becomes more difficult than just doing the fucking API to begin with. I'm gonna put these here. I'm just gonna save these outside of the store. So I'll say dogs, like that, and like that. Okay, so now I'm storing the dogs out here. And instead of that, I'll say that set dogs, dogs. Cool. And now my fetch dog is going to do something similar. Promise.resolve, that's our fake fetch. And the dog is dogs.find dog. Dog ID is ID. And then oh, actually, you know what? Interesting. We actually can make a choice here. I like this. So we could keep doing this fetch dog if I just want to get one dog. Probably almost never going to be the case that it's crazy more expensive to get all of the dogs than just get one of the dogs. So what if I did this? Instead of any of this shit, whenever this view loads up, why don't I just fetch all the dogs and then get the one that I want? Smart. Cool. So whenever this route loads, I'm going to get all the dogs. And then I'm going to add a new key to the store called getters. And I'm going to make one for dog. And dog, never remember the syntax for this. So I'm going to look up vuex store getters. I want to see what they take. Takes in state, and then if I want to pass in an argument, I know I have to do something. Yeah, there we go. I have to do it this way, where you get this gorgeous syntax, where you have the state function, which takes in as an argument a function that takes in whatever you pass it. So we'll say dog is it state, ID, and then whatever. So we want to do, we have state and ID available now via, anybody know? Closure. Very nice. Actually, I want to spend just a sec talking about this because this is really common in functional programming, but like it sort of explodes your fucking brain the first 100 times you see it. Another way that could have been written. This and this are the same thing. Any questions about that?
If you were gonna talk about that like in an interview,
Mm-hmm.
what would be like the best, like the most technical way to like really describe what's happening?
It's a higher order function because it's a function that returns another function. And down in this scope, we have this variable because we closed over it. And we get this one because it's the parameter of the function. And if I were calling that, I would do something like, this is the state, this is the ID. That is sick. All right, anyway. So, all right, I'm trying to get a dog. I have the state. So I can do state dot dogs dot find dog ID equals ID, and I need to return it.
Any reason you're using double equals instead of triple?
I almost always do with IDs because if you read an ID out of the DOM, it's always a string. And I don't actually give a shit if it's a string or an integer. Is the ID the same? Or if you read something out of a form, that's also always a string. If I wanted to do triple equals, I do this sometimes too, where I'll do that and then coerce both of them into numbers. This does the same thing as parse int, except it's one character. That's some JavaScript 301 trivia shit, by the way. Yeah, if you want to make sure something's a number, put a plus in front of it. Cool. So I'm returning the dog that I find. This is showing up there. So how about instead of dog, I say dog.name, and do they have anything else? Votes, I guess. Dog.votes. Cool. And if hey, there we go. And I can also show their image. Maybe their alt text is also dog.name. We can bind that like that. Same thing with the source. We can bind the source to dog.image URL. And there we go. Let's get some different puppy images. Oh, this guy's a classic. And oh, look at that heartbreaker. That one's small. See, it's obnoxious when they know they're cute. They just kind of get an attitude. All right. And let's constrain these images a little bit. Cool. So now, pretty dope. That's all we had to do. Now, if I want to get that voting functionality back, it sort of makes sense to take that out of the dog listing. Let's get rid of that. And let's say that I'm going to put this here, and I'm maybe going to make a button that says vote. All right, walk me through it. How do I make this button increment this dog's vote count?
Do act click unit.
Yep.
Pull a vote on it.
Love it. Now what? Emit it? How? Where? Where am I missing? Yeah, so I gotta make space for some methods. I make an upvote dog method. Cool, what do I do in here?
This dot money emit upvote dog with the ID.
How do I get the ID?
Dot ID. Do you have access?
Oh yeah, that would work. I've got an even better way to do that. Actually, no, that's a pretty good way to do it. I was gonna say I could also use my dog ID computed property,
Oh, yeah.
but I can't just do this dot dog, or I can't do just dog ID because it's not in scope. I can do it that way, or I can do it that way. Cool. So I'm emitting this. Who's listening to it? What?
If it's a child.
Ah, interesting. So if I look at that dog's view, yeah, this is rendering inside of all of this, only template-wise. I can't listen for an event on the router view, or maybe you can, but I've never seen somebody do that before. It's a bad idea. Really, all that's active for purposes of dog, this is everything we need. What is upvote dog ultimately going to do? Go to the store. I'm in a view that's allowed to access the store. So what do I do?
Like bringing them store. This is dot store dot dispatch.
Yeah.
Upvote dog.
Yeah. Cool. So if I do that, that's going to dispatch that action, which is going to commit this mutation, which is going to update the state. So now I got this vote button. Oh, no. No. Uh-oh. Got errors happening. VM dog is undefined. Ooh. So, why does it think dog is undefined? If I go into the view inspector and take a look at the state, no, dog's got shit. These are in here.
Is it because we didn't give it a prop of like empty state? Is it throwing that before the promise?
Right. So I'm dispatching fetch dogs from this, but sometime, and like dog is aliased to this, it's going to try to do that whether or not it's like the dogs have finished loading. So just like in React, we have to account for the empty state. So we can do something like or empty object, and the error goes away.
Where did you put that?
I put that there. You can also do that in the store, which is probably a little bit more flexible. Return that or something of the same data type at least. You could also do like a default dog that has like a placeholder image and like the name is dog loading or something like that. That's kind of common too. All right. Next. My vote button's not working. How am I going to debug this? Yeah, sure. Let's see if I'm getting here. Didn't get there. How strange. So the names match. That's good. Why would that not be firing? Oh, you know what? I don't need to do click native on an element. Because a button element can't emit some wacky event that I made up. All it can do is DOM elements. So you don't need to specify that it's native. All right. And pew, 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 pew. I go over to Waggy, give Waggy some votes. Go to Bowser. Bowser's all right. And then votes are still there. They're still in state.
Can I see dog W? Just
Yeah, an element can't handle a custom event. Neat. Now we gotta mess around.
You hear this stuff?
Yeah. What questions do you have?
Can you explain that getter method?
Mm-hmm. So a getter is kind of like a computed property, but for the store. So like we could also do something like currently selected dog as part of the state. That doesn't quite feel right. Really, I want to be able to just look up a dog by ID that is derived off of this dog state. And so that's what a getter is. And like another like example of a getter we might do is something like dog count. And these are actually a little easier because we don't need to like take in an argument. So we just say, cool, it's state.dogs.length. But if we need to be able to pass an argument to it, then we have to use a higher order function like that. Kind of like we did in React, actually.
They really explain like a bit real quick.
Mhm. So all the events that you work with in the DOM, the browser takes care of. Like you click on something, it figures out, oh cool, a click event occurred. You submit a form. Awesome, when you submit a form, browser takes care of emitting a submit event. What emit does is give you control over the events that your components emit. So you can do this stuff directly. You can do things like have an upvote event or something like that. Or like a submit payment event. You can do stuff that's like specific to your domain. And just like DOM events, what they fundamentally are is just strings that you can also pass arguments along with. And then when you listen to them, you're just listening for an event with that string. You're welcome. What else?
So is computed kind of like props then?
No. Compute is like in React when you think about any time you did something like dogs is state.dogs.map and then you made like a JSX element or something like that, that's a computed property. They just get grouped together in view components. Anytime you just put something on that class that was giving you something based on the state, that's computed. You can also just put static data there if you want. I could put a computed property on here that just returns something. Cool, what else?
In our dog list view, we had this thing called props.
Mm-hmm.
We passed in dogs and typed it as an array.
Yep.
But then in our dog view, we didn't do that. We didn't say like dog is an object.
I do. We'll just wrap it up. What was your question, Jeremiah?
So then in our dog.view,
Uh-huh.
we didn't have like props with dog as an object. Is there a reason for that?
Dog.
Or could you do that? Or am I misinterpreting
Ah.
what props is?
Like in this one?
Yeah.
Cool. Can anybody answer Jeremiah's question? Why we didn't have to declare a prop?
Is that because of computed? We just pulled it from state?
Yes, because of that. It was never passed into the component. Nothing gets passed into views.
Sick. Okay. Nice.
Now, what would be a completely reasonable thing to do would be to do a dog detail component. And if I just copy this entire thing, dog detail, and I call that dog detail, but instead of getting the state, instead of getting the dogs, I do want to omit this time. Whenever that happens, I'll omit. Come on, man. Upvote dog with this.dog.id. And now I want to use props because I'm going to take this in as, take the dog in as a prop. I do something like that. And now I import that component, import dog from source components, dog detail, and then I say that that's a valid component so the template can see it. And then you guys come in. And then instead of all of this, I maybe just do dog detail, find it, and then get rid of that. And still works. Oops. Oh, but now I also need to listen for that event. So I need to like, this is like one of the biggest difference between these like kind of fake events and DOM events is you need to manually bubble. They won't bubble on their own.
Okay.
There we go. Way to go, Percy. Bowser's all right. Waggy gets my votes. Cool. One more question. What do you got? Hmm?
So it seems like this is like a good in between of like Redux and React in a lot of ways, like where, you know, with the store, so scalability, how do you keep that organized when you have states for all these different things?
So glad you asked that. So let me show you what this looks like in a grown-up app. So this is Develop Denver's store. So your store file is actually pretty small, but I'm using a plugin. I'm keeping track of the version in state. The idea was that like we could tell somebody was using a stale version and then update it for them. But the main action here is I'm pulling in these modules, and these modules are like sub-stores. So if I look at tickets, this is all the state getters, actions, and mutations associated with tickets. And so those are all grouped together. And then there's a pattern that I stole this from Ember, but I fucking love it. I have a services module that keeps track of services. So this is a much, much bigger talk, but I can show you my slide deck on it. It's app architecture with Vue, and let's see. It's this architecture pattern. So it's teeny tiny here. I do have a blown up one. The idea is that you have these components that take in state and emit events. Those go to views, which can be nested, and they are all under app. And then these things interact with the store, but the components kind of don't, except services. Services are things like, who is the currently logged in user? Don't pass that shit down through props. Like, it's you just end up putting it everywhere. Or what the current date is. Don't hard code that. Don't pass that shit down either. That stuff is, those are services. Those should be just broadly available across your application. It's a special kind of state. And so I like putting all of those together. And then the other pattern that I do is these modules, instead of like making the fetch requests and stuff directly, you do them through models and serializers and stuff exactly like you did in Rails. And in my never to be humble opinion, that is like maybe the only appropriate use for classes in JavaScript. Like models. So like we'll have this talk model that's a class. And my favorite part about this is that it extends the model base class, which is like I sort of ripped off of Active Record. Oops. Come on. And this gives you stuff like, if you're using a conventional API, like you get fetch all for free. You get fetch for free. You get create for free if you're following conventions exactly like you do with Active Record. So I think classes are super good at that and like not good for any fucking thing else in JavaScript. Cool. Thank you very much.